higher education, especially within public higher education, there has been a transformation from the news and information, publicity, getting the word out, to positioning and differentiating and becoming a full-service public relations branding office. And that's relatively recent. I told Russ when I first came here, there were 2 members of the staff who told me that they refused to be called public relations officers. They came from an office that had a tradition in information services, and they thought they were to be unbiased or middle of the road, and they didn't want to be seen as, perceived as advocates. Well, when I asked them, from where they got their paychecks and things like that, but they really did see themselves as part of information disseminators, and thinking that if information from Michigan State is disseminated broadly and deeply, then inherently people would buy into the message. Well, as we all know, that isn't true. So over the years, we have told ourselves that we are indeed, first and foremost, advocates for Michigan State University and for the mission of a land-grant university, whether it be for students or for alumni or for citizens of the state or for citizens of the world. So there has been a transformation, and we are now allowed to call ourselves public relations officers. And we're allowed to use terms like branding and marketing, terms that were anathema when I first came here. People in this room certainly know the changes in technology that are demanded of officers and the expertise within it. But I do have some concerns about our profession and the effects and impacts of some technological changes. I am teaching a course in higher education public relations, and tonight I am entering into the class discussion 5 laws of physics that pertain to public relations in higher education, and they do relate to technology. And one of them is about the acceleration of speed leads to acceleration of superficiality squared. There's another law of issues management physics, the law of distortion by compression, and the law of confusion by diffusion. And there's another law that says excessive energy at the poles creates a vacuum of light in the center, which is, could also be known as the Beck-Obermann effect. And so there are, and then there's also a law of temporal provincialism, which is a term coined by a science fiction writer at Penn State I knew, that talked about the focus of the now and too much emphasis on the now. And the now is all we have, but you cannot declare it arrogantly as the be-all and end-all of our understanding of the future, or certainly of the past. Heartily agree. Gandhi said there's more to life than increasing its speed, but often within our information dissemination world, speed is too highly valued. Get it first, and we hope we get it right rather than reverse. There is a superficiality component to it as well, because when you do emphasize speed, you don't emphasize depth. So the distortion by compression, which is a term Walter Cronkite used, really happens because the more you compress data or information or even knowledge, the more you distort it.
What worries you about the future of higher ed, and what are the challenges it faces?
I think one of my worries is the myth that teaching is no longer a part of a research university as much as it used to be. And if that myth turns into reality, that is a concern too. I still think that people look to higher education for the transmission of knowledge, not just the creation of knowledge. And too much emphasis on research or on outcomes away from the classroom, I think, can be a concern if the public thinks that that's what we're all about. And we could be part of that problem. When you look at what we promote now that we maybe didn't do very much in the past, economic development, economic impact, things that a research university certainly is obligated to have, especially a land-grant university. But we have to find better ways to sell and tell about what goes on in the learning environment. When you recruit students, you're recruiting sometimes against small liberal arts colleges, and when you see how they project their mission about teaching, about students, about faculty-student relationships. So I want teaching, and I want a PR office to find new ways or better ways to talk about that process in an institution. I will give the same answer I gave when I was first interviewed by anybody about this profession. Use of language, correct use of language, correct use of grammar, correct use of punctuation. And I don't care what method of social media you are using, you can kill yourself if you misspell a word or misspell a name, or say comprise instead of compose, and say that instead of which. Anybody who is an educated person knows that the correct use of communication skills will always be the prerequisite for an effective public relations person. And I don't care. And that is why that distortion by compression and the emphasis on speed concerns me, because if people think they can allegedly communicate through a few words or a few symbols, they are not communicating. They may be putting out some information, but on the hierarchy we have data, information, knowledge, wisdom, and truth. Maybe data and information can be conveyed through compressed ways, but knowledge, information, and truth cannot.
And it's related. How does that tie into your advice for young people who want to get into the profession, or old folks that want to get better at it?
Well, one, don't come to my PR class and say, I want to take this class because I want to be in the College of Communication, but I don't like writing. I said, what do you think this class is? So, one, I do think we all should talk to people about language, about effective editing. Editing isn't a role for somebody else or some specialization. True communicators. And the use of language in an interview is very, very important. When a political candidate is out there giving a speech, do you want he or she to be conveying it through a language that is less than elite? Because I want an elite communicator to be an elite leader. Not elitist, but you have to communicate. And it can't be a speech writer, it has to be the speech giver as well.